So welcome to BODS online training, and I guess you guys can see my screen as well. So today we will be looking at day one of the training. So day one we will be going with more of the introduction and more of the understanding about the business objects data services. So first we need to understand the tool, the different terminologies that we use in the tool, and the architecture of the tool, and why we use the tool, and then we get familiar with the purpose, get familiar with the looks of the tool. Then we can clearly understand why and what we are going to learn in the future. So today it is more of an introduction, so which we already did in the demonstration part, which I will be repeating once again. So we will look at it in a very simple way. So let me tell you about the training process. So this training process is made easy. So what I will be doing is I'll be doing this training in a step-by-step approach. I'm not differentiating between the developer roles and the administrator roles. I'm teaching both together combined, and because if I differentiate them and if I teach them, then you might just concentrate on the development or on the admin part. So I don't want that to happen. I'll be teaching both the administration roles and the developer roles simultaneously. So when I'm teaching an admin role, I will stress on that, saying that this is sort of an administration role, or the rest, everything will be the developer's role. And the second most important thing is the terminology. So we might have heard about the words like data stores, connectivities, or ETL from different ETL tools. But data services has some set of jargons or called terminologies which are used for BODS. So we will get familiar with them before we start using data services and start using the tools. So I want you to get familiar with the different terminologies that we use within data services. So I will take you through the look and feel of the tool, like what we call each and every part of the data services. And we will also know what BODS is capable of. So before going and learning the tool, we will learn what we can do using BODS, and we will understand what are the capabilities or what BODS is capable of doing. Then we can easily understand the tool. So I want to put more insight on the tool, or put more light on the tool before we start working with that. So today we will be looking at architecture and also the look and feel, and also we will look at the different parts of the designer, data services designer. That is the place where we will be working, and we will also see different sort of repositories, and we will also see if a freshly installed system is given to you, what you have to do. So just a second. Okay. So now let us start with the introduction of business objects. So as I told you already in the demo, I would like to repeat this once again. So business objects is an independent organization prior to SAP acquisition. So business objects got its own beautiful features, like it can establish connection to any system. So it is quite flexible, from your flat files to an Oracle or an SAP system, or even to the World Wide Web. It can establish a connection and it can extract the data from that. And the second most important feature of BODS is business objects. Business objects is the fastest tool in the market. Let it be a reporting or let it be an ETL part, it is the fastest tool when you compare this with the other tools in the market. The similar tools that are present in the market are Microsoft tools, MSIS and MSAS, I guess. But even they, when literal comparison happened between these two tools, so BODS is the fastest tool. So if you take business objects, it is an independent entity, and it got these unique features, like it is the pretty fastest tool because it will not have a database of its own. It stores everything. It is designed in a way that everything is stored in the cache memory, and it is the fastest tool, and it is built on the SOA based architecture. So the presence of business objects is given by the Gartner, which is online community for describing what software is present where and how it is doing. So Gartner gave the presence of business objects, and the business objects was purchased by SAP, and SAP paid 3 times the price quoted by business objects to ensure that all the future enhancements or all the future amendments of business objects will fall under SAP name, or it will be named after SAP. So now if you look in the market, you'll have the names like SAP Business Objects Data Services, SAP Business Objects Enterprise. So everything SAP is proceeding because SAP purchased this, and after SAP acquired business objects, it made some more enhancements on the tool in a way that this tool becomes more user-friendly with SAP. So that is a little introduction of business objects, and to tell about business objects, it falls under the EIM category, and business objects is of the 11th version, so that is the reason why you hear this terminology called BOXI. BO stands for business objects and XI stands for 11th release. And the first version of business objects is 3.0, the second version is 3.2, and the latest version is 4.x. So there are few enhancements happening on this tool. So the X keeps changing from 0 to 1, 2, and so on till they go and release the final version. So the latest version 4.0 is released to connect with the HANA system. So HANA is a database, and SAP is trying to replace the Oracle database with HANA. That is the roadmap of SAP. And BODS is the only tool which can do the loading to HANA system. And sorry, if you look at the market in another 15 years, so BODS loading all the migrations happen from Oracle system to HANA system, and BODS is the only tool which can do the migration. So that is the roadmap of SAP, and if you see, there is another 15 years of assured future on BODS. So that is one of the most important reasons why BODS is ruling the current market. And so if you look at the business objects is broadly divided into two segments. One is the reporting segment, and the second one is the ETL segment. So the reporting segment contains the tools like Universe Designer, or Crystal, Excel CS, Web Intelligence, Desktop Intelligence, Widgets, Voyager, Excel CS, and QAS, Query as Web Services. So all these things belong to the reporting part of business objects, and ETL part of business objects has data services. So people also call it as BODI or BODI. So BODS stands for Data Integrator, which is also a part of data services. So earlier it used to be two separate systems. One is Data Integrator and the second one is Data Quality. But data services is the combined solution. And one more, sorry. And one more important thing that we need to remember is business objects came into the picture in the Q1 of 2008. So it is a very recent tool, so that can be an interview question, or that can be a question which you need to answer when you are doing your certification, or when you are talking in your interviews about when this tool came into picture and from when you are working on this tool. So that is a little history about business objects and data services. So the purpose of the tool is to establish connections. So you will have the source systems. For example, there are company A, B, and C, and now they want to merge together and have a final SAP system as a target system. So what BODS can do is, BODS as a mediator, it will establish a connection to all the three different source systems, okay, and it combines the data into a single data set, and finally it loads the data into the target system. And within BODS, you can do a modification on the data in terms of applying the business rules, or you can validate the data, you can do a cleansing on the data, you can audit the data, and you can do all these things. So to establish a connection, we need something called a data store. So remember this terminology, data store. So data store is used to connect to different source and target systems. So each system that you connect to using BODS will have a separate data store created. And as I told you, BODS will not have a database of its own. So we will be using SQL Server or Oracle systems as a backend database, and we will have one more data store using which we can establish a connection to the backend database, right? So this is how it works. So every time we extract some data from the source system, okay, we club this data and save a backup of that in the staging area. So we call this backend database as a staging area. Then once we do a staging, we get this data back into the designer and we apply some business rules and save the valid and invalid data. Save the new data with the business rules. Then we perform the validation on the data, save the invalid and valid data, and we take the valid data to the designer and finally load it into the target system using the target data store. And in this way, we are avoiding the invalid records from not going into the target system. So there is a standard migration approach which we have to follow when we are doing a migration. So we need to extract, then we need to do a source validation, then we need to do enrichment, and on the valid data we have to do an enrichment, and before loading we have to do a target validation, and then we have to load the data into the target system. So that will be the standard migration approach. And there are different tools within BODS, so let me take you to that one. And the navigation to log into the designer is Start, All Programs, Business Objects, XI 3.2, Data Services, and Designer. So we will now, I will now take you through the different parts of the Data Services Designer and what are the different terminologies that we use, and later we will go to the architecture class. So now, if you look at this logon screen, so the database type, so you have to choose which is your backend database on which you created your repositories. So we will also see how to create a local repository in today's class. So if you look at this one, these are the different systems that can be supported as your backend databases. So you can have any one of these. So we are having a SQL server, the SQL server name, the database name on which we are creating the repository, the username and password. So these are the credentials that you have to give. And one more thing that you need to remember, sometimes you get this message saying that if you may continue, you may corrupt your repository. So this sort of error comes, or this sort of warning comes when the previous login is not logged out properly, and again you are trying to log into the designer. So it's always better to go for a reset user and continue. And when you click on the reset user, it will take you to the designer. And now, welcome to the designer screen. And if you look at this one, it is broadly divided into 3 segments. Okay, the first one is the project area, which handles the projects. So project is nothing but a folder sort of thing. So if you take the finance module of SAP, so finance module has asset accounting, asset management, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and general ledger. So these are the 5 major jobs of the finance module. So you can create a folder for the finance module and keep all the jobs related to that finance module together within that folder, and you call that folder as a project. So if you look at this one, this is the project folder that I have created for the previous batch. And if you look at this one, all the jobs related to that particular batch, I have placed them in a project folder. So project is nothing but a folder. So if it is a small project, a small client that you are working on, all the jobs related to that client can be present in your system as within a single project. Or if it is a big client, based on a module, you can create a project and you can have the related jobs together under that project. So this is the project area, which holds only one project at a time. So if there are 2 projects, you can see only one project here. And to switch between the projects on the local object library under the projects tab, you'll have the projects here. So you just need to, so this is the project. So if I double click on this, this goes into the project area, or if I double click on this, this goes into the project area. So the first terminology I would like you to know is projects. Project is nothing but a folder which contains related jobs together as a bunch. Okay, this project area has 3 major regions. One is the designer, second one is the monitor, and third one is the logs. So designer tab, we design the jobs. Monitor tab, when we execute the job, we see what is happening in the monitors here. And if you want to see already executed job, you just go to this one and you see the log of the job. And this is what we see in the monitor screen as well for the currently running jobs. If you want to see the history of the jobs log, so you can go here, expand the job, and you can see any of the jobs log here. Okay, so it will give you the job start time, end time, and all the traces. So this is called trace. This is called monitor, which will give a record count. So from which table how many records are extracted, the time taken for the job, and absolute time. And if there are any errors, you will see the errors here. So this is about the project area, which we'll be learning in detail future. And the second one is the local object library. So you can pin them, unpin them if you don't want. So you can just put them aside. So the second one that we'll be looking at is the project from the local object library. Local object library, this database represents your local repository. So each and every individual user will have a separate database on which his local repository is created, and that database name will be present here. And this local repository has these 7 to 8 tabs present here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 tabs present at the bottom. The first tab is the projects tab, which will have the projects folders. And I told you project folder is nothing but a folder where you can save the related jobs together. The second one is the batch jobs tab. So there are two types of jobs within business objects data services. So first one is the batch job and the second one is the real-time job. So batch job, as of now, just understand that batch jobs are used to deal with the master data, and real-time jobs are used to deal with the transaction data. So going ahead, we will learn what are the different things that we can do in the batch job and what are the different things that we can do utilizing a real-time job. So in simple, real-time jobs are used to work with the web services, and batch jobs are used to work with the data in the form of a table. And the next one is a workflow. So workflow is again a folder which can save more than one data flows, or one or more than one data flows which are doing the similar task. So if you are trying to do an extraction using a data flow, so if you have 10 tables to extract and you have 10 separate data flows, you can keep all those data flows within a workflow. So workflow is again like a project. It is a folder where it will have the data flows bundled together, and these data flows will be doing a similar action. Okay. So now next one is the data flow. So data flow is the actual place where the actual business happens within the data services. So if you look at this one, so you have your source table, you have your transformation, and you have your target tables. So the actual business happens within the data flows. So data flows, the actual changes on the data or splitting on the data or applying the business rules, everything happens within the data flow. So that is a data flow. And you have two sorts of data flows. One is the normal data flow and the second one is a ABAP data flow. So normal data flow is utilized when you are doing extraction from any database. So from a flat file, from a database table, from an SAP system, from an Oracle system. So the SAP best practices says that if you have more than 10,000 records, for a good performance tune optimization, you need to use ABAP data flow. So in your SAP source, you can use ABAP data flow only on top of your SAP sources. That is point number one. And point number two is, if you have more than 10,000 records, SAP suggests you to use ABAP data flows to improve the performance. Okay, that is point number two. But I don't see much difference until it is like a count of the source data as 50,000 records. So if you use these ABAP data flows on top of the tables which are having more than 50,000 records, then definitely you will see an improvement in the performance of the job. So these are the two types of data flows that we have, ABAP data flow and normal data flow. Next one is the transformations. So these transformations are divided into three different categories. So transformation means a pre-built set of code that is available within data services, which we can reuse anytime and utilize that in the jobs to ease our development. So these are the pre-built set of codes or pre-built transformations that are present within the data services designer, and these transformations are called as are divided into three different categories. One is platform, the second one is quality, and third one is integrator. So if you look at the platform transformations, these are the different platform transformations that we have. So we have a set of 7 transformations here: case, map, merge, query, row generation, SQL, and validation. And these transformations, so if you are working on any sort of a migration project, so knowing in and out of these platform transformations is more than enough to perform a data migration project. So even if you look at the SAP best practice templates, so they will not use any other transformation other than the platform transformation. So these are the most important transformations of data services. The second one is the integrated transformation. So integrated transformations are the supportive transformations. For example, the data transfer, it helps you to optimize the performance of your job. It improves the performance of your job when you are having huge volume of data. And the second, these remaining transformations are utilized to capture the change data. So CDCs are handled by this one, the change data capture. So if you have change in the data, so if you want to capture these changes from the data, you can utilize this transformations. So there are few changes like type 1, type 2, and type 3. So slowly changing dimensions or immediately changing dimensions, all these things can be addressed by these transformations. So these are the supportive transformations. Third set is the quality transformation. So these quality transformations will help us to improve the quality, and all these transformations to work, we need to purchase some address directories from SAP. So that is one limitation. So this only match transformation, this is the only transformation which will function without any address directories or without purchasing something directly from SAP. So from an organization level, we can procure those licenses from an SAP. So these are the different set of pre-built transformations that are present within the data services system. And next one is the data stores. So I told you in this picture, we need a data store to connect to the source of the target system. So these data stores will help you to establish a connection between the source and the target system. So we create different data stores to connect to the different sources and target systems, and also the staging backend database. Next one is the formats tab. So in this format tab, we establish connection to the flat files or to the XML files or to the Excel sheets. So all the flat file data, we establish a connection, and we can create a source connection. Also, we can create a target file using this file formats. Okay. Next one is the functions. So custom functions. So these has the built-in functions. So if you double click on this, on the left hand side, you can see all the possible built-in functions of business objects, and they are grouped together. So average functions are grouped together, then conversion functions are grouped together, then custom functions. So if you write any custom functions, they will be present in this one. Then database functions, then date functions. So if you want to write any new function as well, the custom function, you can go and write here and save it as a new custom function. And this is one place where you can create these functions. All right. So this is the functions tab. And the next one is, okay, just let me go to the start page. So this is the start page where we have some quick shortcuts. So you have the getting started tab where you open the projects. So it will give you the list of projects that are present. Then you want to create a new project, create a new data store, import files, import from files. So if you want to import some code, like when we export the jobs as a backup, so we export them in the form of an ATL file. So you can import such ATL files using this import from file option. So you get to see the central repository. So central repository is one more new terminology that will be used in business objects data services. Central repository is a common share folder for all the local users. So, okay, so that everybody can upload their code into that central repository, and so many people, all the remaining users, can have an access to that. And this is the access to the management console, which is a web-based administrator. So this is the web-based administrator, so using which you can do all the admin activities. So this is the web-based administrator page, and from the designer, by clicking on this, we can go to the management console directly. And these are the few resources that are available, which gives you the release notes, data services community, forums on SAP Community Network, SEN, then technical manuals and tutorials. All these things are present here. And the recent projects, what are the recent projects that are available within the repository, and what we have done, and when is the last time it is opened. So all this information comes here. So this is a quick walkthrough about the repository. And also, if I click on some of the job, so on the right hand side you get this tool palette, using which you can create your jobs very quickly and efficiently. So this is your tool palette, using which on the right hand side, I just highlighted that, you can utilize this tool palette to create your jobs and in a more effective way. And this is how your typical jobs will look like. Okay, you have a script initialization, so not much complex script. You just write your code here, and then just declare the global variables. Then you have a data flow where you establish a connection to the source tables and target tables using query transformations. And you have another conditional and the third conditional. So your jobs will be the same way. This will be the most complex part that you will be learning in data services. So even if they are building some more segments, so it depends on the size of the data or size of the tables from which you are extracting the data. Alright, so to execute the job, this is present here. You can click on this or press F8 or select the job and right click and execute. So we will go in details to them a little later. So this is a quick introduction about the designer screen. And the next one, we will have a look at the architecture once again. So let me take you to this slide where we have right. So this is the architecture of data services, and if you look at this architecture, there are different components like designer, which we have just seen now, and the second one is management console, which I opened meanwhile when I am telling about the designer. And you have a repository which in turn connects to all the designer, management console, job server, and the job server is in turn connected to the access server and engines, and access server is in turn connected to the real-time clients, and job server is engines are in turn connected to the data dictionaries and address servers. So this is the architecture of data services. So with this, we get a feel that everything is integrated and connected in a single system. Right? So I'll show you the different tools, the navigation to reach designer, management console, repository manager, job server. So the navigation is start, all programs, business objects XI 3.2, data services. And this is a place where we can log into the designer, and this is a place where we can go to the web-based page, which is management console. Then this is the place which takes us to the repository manager, and this repository manager is used to create the repositories. And next one is the server manager, where we can configure, create, edit the job servers. So this is the place where we do some changes on the job servers. So I repeat, this one takes you to the designer of the screen, and the second one is the management console. This is the admin page. The third one is the repository manager, where this is the central part of the PBT, where we create the repositories. And next one is the server manager, where we create the job servers. Right, so this is the architecture, and these are the different tools that are present in the architecture. So right, so Then the repositories. So there are three types of repositories that we'll be generally creating. One is your local repository. So every individual user needs a local repository to log into the BODS system. And the second one is the central repository. So all the developers need a common place where they can upload their code. So we create a central repository on top of that, and there is one more repository called profiler repository, using which we can do the profiling activities. Okay, so if you take at an organization or a project, so we have three users. So user 1 will have his own repository, user 2 will have his own repository, and user 3 will have his own repository. So they have to log into their designer using their own repository, local repository. That is what we call it, local repository. So all of them log into their designer window using their local repository credentials, and once they log in, they can configure a common central repository so that they can upload and download the code from the central repository. So this will be the architecture, and there are two types of environments in which we'll be working, a single user environment and a multi-user environment. So when we are looking at the concept of central repository, so we'll be looking in more detail about the single user instance and the multi-user instance. Right? So this is about the architecture, the different tools, and what we are trying to do with the data services designer. I hope this is clear so far. So if you have any questions, so please ask me, ping me on the chat or unmute yourself and ask me a question, because we'll be going to the next part, like setting up the system, where the actual technical thing starts, and this is administrator's role. The first thing that we'll be looking at is an administrator role, but do not differentiate. It is as well as important when you are working as a freelancer or when you are working with the big projects. This is a mandatory thing that we need to know and that we need to do. So any questions from your end, please unmute yourself and ask me, or ping me on the chat. So far, the introduction part and the theory part, if we are good, then we can go ahead with the next part, setting up the system. I guess we are good. So if you have any questions, you can ask me in the next class. So that is the first thing that we'll be starting the class with. So we will start the class with the questions, and once we clarify all your doubts, then only we'll be going to the next part of the class. So now, till now we learned about the theory of the data services and how it works and all the jargons of BODS and different terminologies and different fields. Okay. Now, if you are in a project and on the first day of your project, a freshly installed BODS system is given to you. So how you are going to set up that one? So if a freshly installed BODS system is given to you, you will not have your local repository. You will not have anything on top of that. So how you are going to make use of that system in a way that you set up the system and start utilizing that. Okay, so it is a very simple step approach. It is a 5-step approach, in fact. So you can do that in 5 simple steps. First one is create a database on the SQL, which will be the general default backend database, SQL or Oracle. Create a database on SQL. The second step is create a repository, which is, let me put it in more clear way, local repo on the database. The third step is assign or register your local repo on the management console. This is an optional step, but still it's one of the mandatory things to know. Okay, so I mean, what I mean to say is, like, you can log into the designer even without doing the third step, but that is important as well. Okay, then create a job server and log in, and register your local repository. And fifth step is log into the designer. So this is done with these 5 simple steps. First one is you need to create a database on the SQL server. And the second step is create a local repository on top of your database which you have created. Third step is log into the management console and register your local repository within the management console so that the administrator can have an access on your repository and can also have a look at what is happening within your repository. And next one is create a job server and register your local repository onto the job server and log into the designer. So these are the 5 simple steps. So first step, create a database. So for that we need to log into the backend database. So just let me log off and take you through this one. Right. So to create the database at the backend, first you need to log into the SQL Server Management Studio. I'm trying to close. Yeah, it's closed. So navigation for that is Start, All Programs, SQL Server 2008 R2 or 2005 server, and go to the Management Studio. And once you go to this Management Studio, you need to log into that Management Studio. Alright. So there are 2 modes of login. One is SQL authentication and one is Windows authentication. Windows authentication will take the default system password and username, and SQL authentication is the prescribed or preferred one. So you take the username as SA and the default password will be SA123 or based on the password that is set up on your system. So just make the system to remember the password and click on connect. So now you'll connect to the database at the backend, and if you look at the list of databases, so these are the databases that are present. So we need to create a database on top of that. Okay, so I'm creating a database by selecting the database, right click and go for a new database and call that database as database underscore morning. Sorry. Okay, I call this database as db underscore morning, or I can just call it as db underscore local repo, but I think the names are already used, so I'm calling it as db underscore morning. And remember one thing, the naming convention is also the thing that I'll be stressing on part of the training. So just follow the naming conventions, because when you work on a project, you don't create a project database with the project name db underscore your name. And generally this is what we do at the time of learning the course or learning the tool. We will create project name with our name, job names with our names and all these things, but remember, do not come out of that practice that we had earlier. So let us start learning the tool with the proper naming convention, because I just want you to act in a professional way once the course is completed. So we'll be quite professional in terms of even learning the naming conventions. So use proper naming conventions whenever you are creating a job. Okay. So we create a database db underscore morning. So generally it will be db underscore user1. So it's always good. Let us create with user1. Okay. So this is the local user on top of for whom we are trying to create a local repository. So this is db underscore user1. So if you want to give a separate username and password for that, you can do that, but we will just utilize the system password, the management studio's password and username. So just click on OK. So I created a user db user1 in the backend database, right? So the first step is completed, creating a database. Then second one is create a local repository on the database. Okay, so first thing, the navigation for that repository manager is Start, All Programs, Business Objects XI 3.2, data services, and the repository manager. So just look at the navigation. It is Start All Programs, Business Objects XI 3.2. I told you XI stands for 11 and 3.2 is the version. Data Services and Repository Manager. So click on the Repository Manager, and this is a pop-up window that comes here, and you have to create your repository manager on top of repositories on top of this repository manager. So the repository type, if you click on the drop down, you see 3 types of repositories. One is your local, central, and profiler. Local is for creating the local users. I mean, every user will have his local repository. The central repository is a common shared place which is utilized for the group of users. So this one is the central repository. And the third one is the profiler repository. When we perform a profiling activity on the system, we use the profiler repository. Okay, so now let us go with the local repository. The database type, which is my backend database on which I created a database for the repository, is SQL Server. Then copy the SQL Server name from here. Okay, and give the name. Then the database that we have created, db_user1. Then if you want to go with Windows authentication, you can check this box, and if you don't want to go with Windows authentication, you want to go with SQL authentication, you go with the username and passwords. And next step is to click on create, but hang on, we need to cross check if this particular database is already used for some other repository or not, because if you start working on a project, the database guy will be a separate guy and you will be a separate person, and you will raise a request for an empty database. So if he provides a database and by some typo error, if he creates or if he gives you the name of the database which is already used for some other user's repository, and if you just click on create, it will drop and recreate the repository which is already existing, and that particular user will lose everything that is present in the system. So do not do that. The first thing is we need to check this one. So click on get version. So it says that the database exists but the repository tables are not valid. Means there are no repositories created on top of this database. So now you are good to go. Click on create, and it will add all these built-in functions to the repository. So it adds all the system functions, template formats, miscellaneous objects, and everything will be added. And once it is done, it will create a message saying that it is successfully created. The local repository was successfully created. Now if you click on the get version, so it says the local repository and the version is available. So this is the difference which I want you to know. If you give a database name and click on get version, and if you get some message of this sort, so just ask the database owner to give you one more database or give you the proper database. Just don't click on create. And there is one more thing, enable security, which we'll be looking at when we are creating a secure central repositories. So that this will be active only when we are creating a central repository. Okay, so we'll look at that when we are looking at the central repository. Now the second step is also created. We created a local repository, and on top of that we created a database, and on top of that we created a local repository. The third step is assign or register your local repository to the management console. So to do that, you need to go into the management console, the Start All Programs, Business Objects XI 3.2, Data Services, and Data Services Management Console. You can either click on this or you go to the Start page, and you can click on this, or this opens in a web page, and this is how it looks. Okay, so it opens like this, Data Services Management Console, and the default username and password will be admin and admin. This is what you give at the time of installation. So at the time of installation, you define like this will be the username and this will be the password. So generally by default it will be admin and admin. So click on login. Then first time when you are logging into the management console, you see only administrator in the blue color, and all the remaining things will be grayed out. So you click on the administrator. Okay, look at the description here. Manage your production environment, including the batch jobs execution, real-time services, web services, adapter instances, server groups, central and profiler repositories, and more. So you can do all these admin activities within the administrator tab. So click on the administrator and expand the management. Click on the repositories, and at the bottom you have an add button. So click on add, and here you have to give the repository name repo underscore user1. Okay, and the machine name, you have to give the server name here, and the database name db underscore user1, and the username and password you have to give here. Okay, so once you give all these credentials, you are trying to register the local repository in the management console. So click on test connection to see if all the credentials that you have given are correct or not. So if the credentials are correct, you get a message saying that successfully connected to the repository. Click on apply, and in the list of repositories you will be seeing your repository. So this is your repository here, repo underscore user1. It is a local repository. This is the system name, this is the server name, and this is the username, the database name, username, and password. So now the third step is also done. So as I told you, it is very simple. The next fourth step is create a job server and register your local repository to the job server. So the navigation to create a job server is Start, All Programs, Business Objects XI 3.2, Data Services, and Server Manager. So here the list of job servers that I have already created are present. So look at the naming convention. Job servers should start with JS underscore. Okay, so edit job server configurations, click on that, and these are the existing job servers. If you want to change any job server, you can select the job server and click on edit, and if you want to add a new job server, click on add and call this as JS underscore, okay, JS underscore user1. But in a project, if you look at the real architecture, so 10 to 15 users are there, and all of them will have only one job server. So this will be the name will not be user1 or user2. Every individual user will not have his own local job server. So all the jobs, all the related or all the local users will have a common job server. Or in real time, it will be like a job server group which all the local users will be connected to. And if the first job server is overloaded with pressure, then automatically the users will switch to the second job server, and so on to the third job server till the work is easily distributed. Just for the training purpose, I am creating it as user1. And the second one is the job server port. So you should have a unique port number. So 3505 is the port number that I am giving, because already 3500, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is the new one that we are trying to create. And next, once you click on that, click on add to associate repository to add your repository to this one. So this is the SQL server. This is the database server name that we need to give here. So you need to copy your database server name from here to get here. The database name db underscore user1, the username and password. You can make this job server as a default, and you can make this repository as a default repository for this job server by checking this or not, and you can click on apply so that your repository user1 will be associated with this particular job server. So if you want to do some changes, click on that and edit and give the password. Okay, then you can do some changes on top of that. So JS user1 is created. Click on OK. Now you don't have something like OK and cancel buttons. You just have a restart button. So when you click on this restart button, that will say that it will restart the services on the machine. So where you will find the services? Go to the control panel, administrative tools, go to the services, and here all the services related to the servers will be present. So you have the business objects, data services, which is already started. Now let me click on this one. Okay, and let me refresh this here so that you'll see the service is now stopped and it will be restarted. Okay, now you see it is started again. So this is how it works. Right, so now your service is up and running. The next step, you created your job server and assign your repository to that. The next one is logging into the designer. So to log into the designer, first we need to get rid of this one, which is already present, the previous batch repository. Right, so logging into the designer, start all programs, business objects inside 3.2 data services and designer. So now you have to give the SQL Server as the backend database because that is what we are using, the database server name. The database name on which we created our local repository is user1 and the username and the password. And you can ask the system to remember the password. So user1 is the database on which we created the local repository. So we are giving the local repository credentials here. Click on OK and it will take you to a fresh designer screen where you'll not have any projects, you'll not have any jobs, everything is empty, and you will not have any data flows built in, you will not have any data stores, or you will not have any file formats added. So everything is empty, and this is how we set up the system and create our local repository. And tomorrow we will see at different aspects like different sort of extractions, so connecting different type of file formats to your data services designer. TXT files, CSV files, XLS files, and any tab separated or any delimiter separated files. And we look at the data stores, how we connect to the other systems using the data stores. So flat files you can directly connect to the designer, and to any databases like source database or the target database or to the intermediate database, you need to create a data store. So we'll see how we created the data stores. And in the jobs, we'll look at the batch jobs and how we create. We'll start creating some sample jobs like extracting the data from the flat file to SQL, SQL to flat file, SQL to SQL, connecting to an SAP ECC system, extracting the data from an SAP system. And then we'll also look at the condition scripts and global variables. So this is almost like we are getting into the real-time jobs, how they look and how we create them. So we'll be looking at these fundamental jobs tomorrow. So any questions you have, so you can ask me now on today's topics so far discussed. Any confusion things, or I'll do one thing. I'll give my email ID to Prakash, and you can Prakash will share my email ID with you, and you can send your queries to that one. So even in the part of the training or even after the training, so if you are stuck somewhere, if you have a question, you are working in the future and you are not able to proceed with some query, so take a screenshot and send me an email, and I'll try to respond to you at the earliest on that, so that we can rectify these things. So any questions on today's class? Alright, so good. So we'll catch up tomorrow at the same time, and I'll be online by 6:50 itself. So once we start a little early, so we'll have more topics to discuss in the class. Alright, so I think we are good to go. If there are no questions, I'll share my email ID with Prakash, and Prakash will share it with you, so that you can send me your questions or you can mail me your queries. Alright, thanks for your time and have a good day ahead. We'll catch up tomorrow.